Hi there, I'm Eshaan M reporting for Kids First. And today, I am super excited to speak with Rob Hoegee, the executive producer of Stillwater, and James Sie, voice of Stillwater the Panda. Rob has worked on many award-winning animated series, including Teen Titans, Slugterra, and Thunderbirds Are Go. He won the 2016 Daytime Emmy for Best Animated Program with Niko and the Sword of Light. And James is an award-winning voice actor who's best known for his work on the Kung Fu Panda series and voicing an animated Jackie Chan, among other characters, on Jackie Chan Adventures. Rob and James, thanks so much for taking the time out to speak with me today.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
So I'll start with you, Rob. So being an EP of an animated show, especially one associated with a pretty big brand like Apple, is a big commitment. So, what stood out to you about Stillwater that compelled you to be EP of the show?
Well, anytime someone offers you a job, it's certainly a good thing. But
Especially right now.
that's right. It's true. Well, Stillwater is actually based on a series of these really wonderful books by a man named John J. Muth. And I actually loved reading them to my kids when they were younger. So kind of in a way, Stillwater, Addy and Karl and Michael were already characters that I knew very well. So, when I heard that they were making a Stillwater series, I almost very nearly begged to be allowed to be a part of it. And a lot of the reasons is I love the message for the show. It's about kindness to others. It's about accepting your feelings. But I also really saw it as an opportunity to make a really high quality show. I knew that something that Apple was going to be behind was going to really be incredible. And this is going to be something that a lot of kids and families were going to be able to see. So that was really exciting to me.
Absolutely. And I think, and I want to know your thoughts on this as well. I think the message of kindness, especially in a time like 2020, when we have a pandemic going on and all these, crazy things happening, I think that's a super important message. What are your thoughts on this?
No, absolutely. I think now we need it more than ever. And, the irony is that animation takes a very long time. I've been working on this show for over 2.5 years. So when we first started this, of course, we had no idea where the world would be right now. So I think it's sort of, pretty amazing timing that our show came out when it did, because I think now more than ever, we need a show like Stillwater.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it feels like this whole year has been so full of really strong emotions. So many people are feeling so many things. And I was really hoping that this show could come out, now, because it really helps you deal with all of your emotions and where to put it and how to work with it. So I think it's really valuable for right now.
Oh yeah, and totally. And I think James, coming to you, I love Stillwater's character just because. So I was watching the show during the school day. I was taking study breaks and watching episode by episode, and I love how calming just the entire the show's aura is. I love that. Whenever I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this anymore, I would just go to Stillwater, find solace in the soothing episodes. So I would like to know for you, what was unique, and how did Stillwater's character actually challenge you as a voice actor?
That's a really good question, and I'm glad Rob is here, because Rob was really instrumental in finding the voice for Stillwater. It's hard because there's a definite balance between you don't want him to be boring, and you don't want you want him to have a certain playful aspect to him, so that he's very relatable to the kids, and that you can see that he really enjoys his life. So Rob was really great in the first, few episodes that we recorded, with kind of finding that balance between being wise and also being playful. Well, it's interesting because pandas have really circled my voiceover life a lot.
Oh yeah, with Kung Fu Panda as well. Yeah.
Panda, and then World of Warcraft, I played a warrior panda. So I have to say though, this is my favorite panda. So think of me.
Absolutely, yeah. And connecting to that, so James, as an individual of East Asian descent, you've voice acted many characters that are kind of set against an Asian backdrop, as we've mentioned. Kung Fu Panda, of course, is a perfect example of one. So I'm sure you've learned a lot about Chinese and Asian culture from there. So did you learn something new about the cultures that were discussed in this show throughout the process?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes cartoons can either be using the Asian quality as a backdrop, in which case they don't really delve deeply into the culture. But I have found with shows like, I just did Ghosts of Tsushima, which is a PlayStation game.
Mm-hmm.
And also with this show, if you have people behind it, the producers, who really are taking the time to invest in the culture and to really not use it just as surface decoration, but as what is the philosophy of that culture, you do really learn a lot. So there were a lot of like Japanese concepts like the ikebana, the flower arranging,
Mm-hmm.
the motonai, which is about valuing things up until the end of its lifespan, like using something all the way to the end. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right, but the kintsugi, the fixing broken things and making them even more special, those kind of concepts were really kind of planted in a really nice way in Stillwater. And I was able to kind of feel what they actually meant because they were an integral part of the script.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think definitely a cultural appreciation is something that Stillwater does really, really well.
I like that because it's, as opposed to cultural appropriation, it's
Right.
cultural appreciation, which is a lot better.
Yes. So, Rob, Stillwater is a pretty one-of-a-kind show. So, was there a first for you, like something you had to do for the first time ever in your long career in the production process of the show?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, this is the first time I've ever done a show that was had two totally different types of animation technique in it. Usually I'll do a show that's all CG or I'll do a show that's all traditionally animated. And then this one, we actually get to do both. So for the sections that you see Stillwater and the kids, it's done with the beautiful computer-generated animation. So we have this sense of realism of light and shadow and color, texture that's very rich and very just sort of visceral and gives you that feeling like you're really there. And within the stories that Stillwater tells, we're using traditional 2D and often hand-drawn animation. And we use those for the koans, which are the stories that Stillwater tells. And for those, we wanted to really feel like we were going into the world of Stillwater's imagination. So they're very graphic and colorful and stylized with lots of interesting contrast and colors and done in a very traditional technique. And in a lot of ways, we're mirroring what were done in the original books, which had John Muth's beautiful watercolor pictures set against this sort of intricate brushwork technique for when Stillwater told the koans in there. So I think it was really fun to be able to use two completely different techniques for the animation of the show.
Absolutely, yeah. And to both of you, I guess I'll ask Rob first. Did COVID impact the production process, or even just for James, the voice recording process of Stillwater?
Well, I can say yes and no. Yes, of course, everyone involved in the production, was certainly worried about themselves and their family and their friends. And, it was sort of a scary time for everyone. The biggest impact is that we had to close our production office. So everyone, this isn't new to just us. I mean, so we had to go and work from home. And so that took a little bit of adjustment because one of the great things about being in the same place is that especially in animation, is you have these really great creative conversations. Sometimes they just happen when you're walking by and say, hey, I love that scene you're doing. And you talk about the creative process and you come up with great ideas and you're able to collaborate with your colleagues. And sometimes you solve problems. It's like, hey, I'm having trouble with this and why don't you try that? And that's really hard to do over Zoom. But one of the great things about animation, and James can talk a little bit about this with the voice recording process, is that most of the work we do in animation, whether it's writing, which is what I do, or even the artists and animators, is one person in front of a computer. So it's really easy to do that at home. And so with lots of, collaboration software, we use Teams and Zoom and all sorts of other networking things, we're able to have our daily meetings and we're still able to do our work. And in a lot of ways, it actually makes it easier because you don't have all of the distractions of people around you. You can just focus on your work. And hey, if you need to get a project done and you want to work at 10 p.m., sure, great. You want to sleep in the next morning, no problem. As long as you're getting your work done, and everyone did, it's actually sort of worked out really well. And we're lucky in animation when most of Hollywood production is being shut down and people are out of work. We've just kept on rolling.
Yeah.
Right.
I was really worried that that sense of community that you have when you come into a studio and you're all together and you're seeing them in the booth across from you as you're recording your lines, that would kind of get lost, But in a weird way, even though I'm at home, I hear all of their voices in my ear, and because you're listening, you're listening very closely. It's very intimate, and so because everybody was still there, just remotely, you did get that sense of community, which was great. You feel supported,
Right. Yeah.
I would say that the only sad thing for me was that I didn't get to see the kids at all during records. So even if I wasn't recording at the same time as the kids, I would see them out in the lobby and we would talk, and you'd get to know them because Stillwater and the kids are just so enmeshed. So I really missed being able to kind of bond with them. But we connected over like Instagram, and so there is still a connection. So that's good.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's unique challenges, and also, I mean, we've had to adapt a lot, and I'm sure film industry especially has had to really adapt a lot. I mean, the whole thing of Hollywood is the big sets, the large crews, all those things, and even for voice recording, everyone's in the booth, and So, for both of you, I'll start with Rob this time. Did you read the book before, even before this whole project had come up? Had you heard of the book? And what were your thoughts on it prior to the show?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. As a matter of fact, we had the first Zen Shorts book right after it came out. My daughter was very young, and it was literally on her bedside table for probably a year and a half. And if I had it in front of me, I would show you the whole thing is threadbare. The cover's blown. The spine of the book is because we read that thing, not kidding you, every single day for over a year. So it was a really special book to me, a very important part of our family. I had a great love for the book. So yeah, like I said, when I found out it was being made into a show, and it's funny, every once in a while there'll be a book that you read and you're like, especially when you work in animation, like, oh, I would love to make this show. and this was always one of them. And so when the opportunity came, it just felt like, oh my gosh, I have to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also, I mean, being the EP, I'm sure you make a lot of the decisions as far as how the show goes and how the show takes course. So was there something from Zen Shorts, from the book originally, that you maybe really wanted to, but maybe didn't have the space or didn't have the time to add into the show?
Well, it's really hard because, when you translate a book from, book to a series, there's always compromises that you have to make. For one thing, you're never often going to be able to replicate a book, unless, every once in a while, especially if it's a picture book, sometimes they're even drawn in a style that looks like it could be animated. And so those types of shows or books are easier to do. But in the case of John's, with these beautiful watercolors, we knew that it was going to be pretty much impossible to replicate that in a series. So we decided from the very beginning that we weren't even going to try. We were going to try to find a way to sort of channel the spirit and the intent of the books, but find our own distinct style for the characters, for the world around it, so that's sort of what we did. Again, it's always about compromise, and I think that what we wanted to do was make a show that stood on its own 2 feet and was wholly ours, but let the book be the book.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to try to, take away from that. We really wanted just to add to it.
Absolutely, and I think you were successful. And so just to wrap up, what do you two hope that kids take away from the show? And I can go back to you, James.
I think that the best part of what the show is teaching you is about how to take emotions that you have within you, and that the emotions themselves are not bad at all. They are what you're experiencing. But the idea that you can deal with them in a way that makes them safe and makes them manageable versus something out of control. And I think if kids can learn that, I think it would be a huge lesson.
Yes. So thank you guys so much for speaking with me today. It's been a pleasure, and I really, really, really enjoyed getting a behind the scenes look at Stillwater. So Stillwater is available on Apple TV Plus right now. I'm Eshaan M reporting for Kids First. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications by hitting the bell so you don't miss my next interview or those of my amazing Kids First teammates. Also, follow Kids First on social media at the usernames on the screen right now. Bye!